Go.
You're gonna have to retell that story now, Aaron.
Yeah, right.
Hello, YouTube. This is BUB'S Comics presenting the No Faces comic chat. Today, there's a couple of honorees in the title here, but we'll go with Deadpool 2323 is joining us. And we also, as always, we have DS Comics and Metarog. So go ahead, Deadpool 2323. Do you know the name of our chat tonight?
I have no idea what the name of your chat tonight is.
It has something to do with Bub's old stomping grounds, I think.
Oh, you guys suck. What about you, Roger? Help me, Metarog. You're my only hope.
Oh man, I forgot. Totally awesome.
Oh,
I forgot the last part.
I give.
See, at least I got the Hell's Kitchen right.
Yeah, you got. Yeah. All right. Almost no points for you, and no points for anyone else. It's a No Faces comic chat with the overwhelmed Hell's Kitchen Morgue. Yeah, see?
That's awesome.
Wow.
So, a couple of things going on with that, right? Is Deadpool 2323 had a big pickup this week. So we're honoring that, and then also with Punisher, right?
Yep.
And we're also gonna honor the death of the season 4. Is it that they canceled for Netflix?
Yeah.
So Daredevil season 4 is gone.
Boo.
Yeah. So obviously the poor Daredevil fans out there are all crying and flooding the morgue. So there you have it.
Except for the ones who don't yet have a Daredevil #1 or other sundry Daredevil keys, they probably will be cheaper now.
Yes. Is a sundry like a tomato glaze? Did you get at a nice Italian restaurant?
Sure, I'll go with that. Why not?
I love those.
So Daredevil #1 and tomato glaze key issues.
Well, that was my recommendation to him as well, right? So Deadpool 2323, I told him that he needs to get Daredevil #1, but I think I was in the minority in that.
Yeah, it was really you. It wasn't that you were in the minority. You said Daredevil 1. JPL Flash said Daredevil 1. So you both said the same one. DS Comics said Strange Tales 110, and Roger said Tales to Astonish 27, and I took nobody's advice and I went and got Amazing Spider-Man 129.
I mean, when the inspiration strikes, right? Doesn't matter what was on your mind. Just grab what you can grab when you can grab it, right? I think that was one of our.
It wasn't inspiration; it was price.
Oh well, yeah, that helps.
And availability. It was available.
Yeah, that too.
I mean, he found it.
Yeah, and that ASM 129, if we're looking at bronze keys, I mean, everybody has their own list, and you can go search for a list. The Overstreet Price Guide has a list, whatever. But, I mean, obviously Hulk 181 is the top bronze key, undisputed champion of that list. But I really think ASM 129 and Giant Size X-Men #1, those are interchangeable at the 2 and 3 spot, I think. I really think. And then House of Secrets probably #4. So you can't go wrong with the ASM 129. That is an absolute top-notch bronze key. And there's the other one. There you go. So
it is a pretty.
I have for Bronze Age Marvel. There's only one major key left I'm missing, and that's Iron Man 55. And then the other key that I want that I'm missing is Ghost Rider #1. But that's pretty much it. Just those two.
Yeah, and that's attainable because Iron Man 55 is, it's pricey, but I mean, compared to the other stuff, it's doable, and the price is sort of leveled off after the movie. And then Ghost Rider 1 is his first in his title, so you're not looking at like the Marvel Spotlight 5 on price on that. But if somebody was looking at those two books like you are, I would say grab that Ghost Rider 1 first, because that price is likely to move quicker upward than Iron Man 55, which is sort of leveled out for now.
I would agree with you. And also, I'm going to wait a full year before I even look at Iron Man 55. Iron Man 55 is going to jump again in the spring when they start releasing trailers and stuff for Avengers 4. But
Yeah.
it'll come back to Earth next year because Thanos will be done. He'll be gone, and you won't have to worry about him in the movies and making a big jump again. They're not going to do storyline after storyline with Thanos, in my opinion.
No, I agree. It'll be come and go, and that'll be the end of that.
Man from Bingtown just said he wants a House of Secrets 92 first Swamp Thing. I think I'm not the biggest DC guy, but I think of the Bronze Age keys for DC, I think House of Secrets 92 is probably the top one.
Are there any others?
Well, there's the Green Arrow, Green Lantern where they first meet.
Oh yeah.
Number
That's a pretty
76.
significant key too.
I'll tell you, the House of Secrets 92, price-wise, like price per point, that's second only to Hulk 181, and not by a whole lot anymore. I mean, it's number 2 in price, but that book has a lower print run and appeals to a wide array of collectors. It's a first appearance in a superhero genre of Swamp Thing. It's a Bernie Wrightson book, and it's the top bronze horror book. So there's a lot of genres that's at the top of, makes it a very sought after book. And then it's the availability, right? The availability of that is much lower than a lot of those other bronze keys. I mean, it's out there, but I mean, if you do an eBay search for Hulk 181, you get plenty, or ASM 129. You do a House of Secrets 92, there's not as many. I mean, if you're looking for a specific grade, it may not be out there right now. It's a little tougher to find, and that book's really been moving. It's a solid book.
Yeah, agreed. That is the DC bronze key to get.
Oh yeah, definitely.
In my opinion.
I'm after it pretty hard for this next year. It's at the top of my want list. My hope is that I'm able to, because I'm trying not to, after Giant Size X-Men 1 last week, I'm trying not to really buy anything big. So my hope is that as I keep, churning books, that I can build up enough to get a House of Secrets 92 sometime before like February or so, and just get a nice, decent copy of it. Probably already graded and slabbed if I could.
Yeah, I looked at a raw like I don't know. I put it at 6.5, 7.0 range. House of Secrets 92, and I offered $1,000, and the guy would only come down to 1,200. So we were 200 apart, so we couldn't come to a deal on it. But I mean, if you can score a deal on that, it's a good book to pick up. But maybe I'll go back to them and see if I can do 1,100, because a 7.0. I mean, I just looked. That's like $2,000 now.
Yeah, when I say a decent grade, I mean 2.5.
Yeah, I mean, hey, 2.5.
That's decent in my world,
That'd be better than any grade. I don't have any of them.
Collectors out there.
Yeah, I don't have it at all. So
as long as it's complete, it's good for me.
Yeah, I don't want any major blemishes or holes in the cover. I don't want any major stains or a lot of like water damage. But other than that, I just want a complete cover, and I want it to look, somewhat presentable. But even those Bronze Age books, I give them a lot of leeway in damage to the cover, especially a horror-themed book or anything close to it. I really don't mind all the creases and the cracks. I think it gives it character. So.
Yeah, I was trying to flip it anyway. I was gonna buy it and get it pressed and graded and flip it, but that's what I was gonna do with it. But
yeah, I'm hoping that I can find a House of Secrets 92 this year at a yard sale where there was a guy who hoarded 21 of them.
If only, huh? If only.
If anyone's gonna find him, it's gonna be you.
Yeah, that's right. I wouldn't put it past him.
I don't know, man, you should look at that Gills 311.
Well, I sent you that link,
that was
right?
a great score.
Yeah, you did. I watched that video. That may take the title this year for whole of the year.
Wow.
Yeah,
and
I'll tell you,
that he had another 60 or whatever boxes there.
Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, we hear you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what he showed, he had a lot more. He was just showing some of the keys, but just the ones he showed, and count. He has a bunch of other ones. Obviously, you're talking like $150,000 worth of books. I mean, just the ASM 252s he had a, like, I don't know, 30.
Hey guys, I can't hear you. Hold on a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, he had like 30.
He won't know if he can hear us if we're not talking. So go ahead.
Yeah, I'll keep going, and then he can let us know when he hears us.
He can hear through the chat, not here.
But yeah, he had like 30 near mint plus newsstand ASM 252s. You know, I figure if you got them graded, you get half of 9.6s, you get a bunch of 9.8s in there. I mean, 30 of those, you're talking like 15 grand just in the ASM 252s. And then
I hope he doesn't flood the market with those before I get mine back from CGC.
Yeah, well, he had something. It was either him or somebody else picked up a bunch of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle third prints, a whole dealer box of like unused stock.
Wow,
that will flood the market on something like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, even a third print, because there's not a ton of those books out there, and this dude picked up like 40 of them or something.
Yeah, I got one.
from that guy.
No, I've had mine for years.
Yeah, that's my biggest regret. That's my biggest miss out when I was like 10 or 11 years old when that came out. I passed on it for 25 cents, and I got a Thor book instead, and I should have got the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for a quarter. First print.
Wow.
Brand new first print for a quarter.
I don't have a first print. I don't have a first print.
I have no prints.
Yeah, I'm with you, Bub. I got none either.
I got none. I do like the Turtles. I've got a couple. Like I have the first 4 set of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that were based on the TV show. Which that was a big thing for me. You know, I found them all in the wild. I was real happy about that. And I've got, I think it's some sort of special or something, and it's signed by Eastman and remarked. It's not too bad. I'm happy with my small little Turtles collection.
Well,
yeah, and this will tell you the difference that scarcity makes with books. When you look at Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1, it's a pretty historic book because of it being an independent in the 80s, and it wasn't a mainstream book. And then look at something like Spawn #1, which basically started the independents being major titles, and it was artist owned. I think historically those are about equivalent, but if you look at the prices, they're worlds apart, because one, there's not many out there, and Spawn #1s, there's millions of them. And that's mainly the scarcity. If there was a low print run, like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles print run on Spawn 1, that book would be selling, you know, several thousand. But that's the difference scarcity makes with a book, no matter how historically significant it is.
You're right. That is, the scarcity is just polar opposite. I mean, I've only seen one. I remember when it came out in I think it was 84 or whatever. I'm not sure. I don't
85,
remember.
I think.
85. Okay. And I was at the comic book shop when they came out, right? And our comic book shop only got one, and nobody bought it.
Yeah.
It just was on that rack for, you know, I don't remember, you know, but I'm sure it was there for weeks, and nobody bought it. Everybody was like, "What's this? You know, what's this thing? You know, this is not a Marvel, it's not a DC." And
yeah, there's no
that
internet.
is now laughing all the way to the bank.
Yeah, no internet, no movies. Nobody knew it was coming out or what it was. The cover is unspectacular if you see it on the rack. I mean, it's just that pink and black sort of sketch cover. It's an odd size. I mean, I would I passed it up for 25 cents.
Yeah, well, you and about a million others, I bet. Yeah.
Yeah, if that had a cooler cover, I would have picked that up instead of the Thor, which was some random Thor like in the 300s or something, or 406 or something, but had a cool cover. But you know, I was 10, so I didn't know.
I was a little more than 10.
We're not giving you a pass, DS. 10 or not, you should have picked up that book.
You're not giving the 10-year-old a pass. All right. Well, I wish
now, maybe some other 10-year-old, but not
harsh.
You.
I don't want the pass. I sometimes fall asleep having these dreams and fantasies of going back in time and doing different things in my life, and picking up that is high on the list, honestly, of what I would do if I could go back in time. You know, in 1985, the best things to do would be to buy and hold Microsoft and buy Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1. There you go.
Maybe buy stock in Microsoft.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Stock, man. Or be employed by Microsoft. That would be all the better, because even the secretary is a billionaire now.
No, that's true.
Yeah, but then you got to work for it. If you you won't have as much time to hang out at the comic shop and buy all the books you should have bought.
Well, I guess that's one way of looking at it. But now, after 10 years, you have all the money you want to buy pretty much anything you want.
Yeah, and I'd say probably from the 80s, like Copper Age. I mean, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a little fringe book, but if you let's take every Copper book in 9.8, what's the most expensive, most valuable? It's probably Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1, right? I mean, I don't think
Yeah.
anything is ahead of that.
Yeah.
For Copper
I don't know.
Age, not even
I think-
close.
What about Cerebus 1?
I mean, I don't think that's, you know,
It doesn't have near the exposure.
it's not
Until I
35
got into the
grand.
comic community, I didn't even. I knew nothing about Cerebus. Meant nothing to me.
Yeah, I think maybe
So-
that's five to 7 grand, but I mean, a TMNT 1 in 9.8 is like a $35,000 book. That's like
Yeah.
Silver Age key price, you know, for like a Hulk 1 in mid grade. You know what I mean? That's crazy price for a book from the 80s.
Yeah, I think they still go for a couple grand though. Maybe not 35,000, but they still go for a couple grand because they even had a counterfeit copy of it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's interesting. There was so many counterfeits of that there's actually a collectability to owning a counterfeit one, because there were so many done and so well done that if you own a counterfeit, that has value because of what it is too.
Yeah,
People-
CGC used to grade them, and I think somebody complained, and then they said they wouldn't grade them anymore.
Yeah, I mean, there's ones out there with old labels that say what it is, and it says counterfeit edition.
That's not even fair.
I know, but if you're a
eBay.
completist and you have that book, there's so many counterfeits and so well done. It's such a part of that market that people will want. It's almost like a second print for that. You know, you want the original, and then you want the counterfeit one to go with it. It's kind of a cool little oddity, the level it reached for a counterfeit book. It's interesting to me.
Okay, Seawater 19 asked a good question. I know there's a lot going on in the chat. We need to acknowledge some of these people in the chat. We've got a ton of people, 21 people watching right now. But Seawater asked a great question, or actually says a dumb question. So, okay, here's Seawater's dumb question. When does the modern age end and we start a new age of comics? I think that they're going to backdate the Copper Age to when the variant craze started. And I think that's going to be a new age. I don't know what they're going to call it yet, the variant age or whatever, or, you know, I guess it would be a variant era, and then we'll age it later. But I think that's what they're going to do. So I think they're going to go back. What did you say the modern variant started? Somewhere maybe 2007? It was around 2011 where everyone was getting double issues of things. I know I don't have a great panel for that question, but
I would personally say that if you look, okay, so the golden age is everything up to 56 on to 1969 was the silver age. Then you have the bronze age, which started in 1970, and that went to, if I'm not mistaken, 83.
Well, they say
right?
83. I disagree with that, but yeah, 83 is the consensus on that. Yeah.
Right. And then from the Copper Age is 84. And they really, I don't know what the definitive between the Copper Age and the modern age is, but most people kind of put them together.
Right. Yeah, I don't. I think the Copper Age is a very distinct era that starts with the black costume from Spider-Man. Is what I think starts the Copper Age. And I think what ends the Copper Age and starts the modern age is the publication of Spawn #1. That's, I think, is a clear line. You know, McFarlane and a bunch of other artists left Marvel, an artist-owned company. So business-wise, it was sort of a new animal. The art, that was really the first books I noticed that had that really high-grade paper and printing, and you know, it really blasted the independents off as being viable in the comic market. And Image put out a lot of cool stuff, and Spawn 1 is the Cadillac.
What year was Spawn 1, DS?
1991, I think.
Yeah, I believe you're right.
91 or 92.
So see, that's something you guys are talking about, two different realms there. Deadpool 2323 is talking about doing it by year, and you're talking about doing it by significant event and publication.
Well,
that's always going to be a little bit grade between the two.
Well, they say the birth of the Silver Age is Showcase 4, correct?
Well, that's debatable, but a lot of people think that, yes.
So I could see where DS is going with that. Personally, I believe roughly around 2005 is when this huge variant market started, and I think somewhere in there is and I don't have exact book or date, but that's what I think when this huge variant crash started. That's when the next era of comics should be. And I
Yeah,
don't know
that's what I'm going with.
I mean, personally, I would call it the platinum era.
Well, there already is a platinum is the problem, and that's
Yeah,
the
platinum
old
is
stuff before the golden age.
Yeah, platinum
Steve
is
Woodard said
pre Action Comics 1.
Yeah,
golden age.
Steve Woodard
Really?
says he would take
I didn't know
aluminum age. I'm good with aluminum age, copper then aluminum.
There
I'm
you
good
go.
with that.
Yeah, aluminum would be all right. Yeah, that would
And
kind of make
then
sense.
the next age will be what, knob and tube.
Knob and tube.
Yep, knob and tube. Just a
the
different
brass age. The brass age.
brass
Well,
is too nice.
Brass is too nice. Well, you know, DS makes some good points there, but I think there are too many other significant events for us to sort of just, you know, gloss over. Like you have, you know, the DC revamping and rebooting their characters in the mid '80s. You know, with the Dark Knight, you know, the Dark Knight Returns, the cancellation of the Crisis cancellation of Superman's titles, and the reboot of Man of Steel, the reboot of Wonder Woman. I mean, that's a pretty seminal event for DC. Like, I kind of agree with you as far as for Marvel, but I think if we take it at age of all comics together, we have to consider those events happening too.
Yeah, well,
Dave,
let me clarify.
Man from Beantown said we should call it adamantium age.
Yeah,
That's nice. I like
cool.
that.
Yeah, let me just
Marvel,
clarify what I was saying about the
And plastic age from the Gray Man.
Yeah.
Or maybe
Yeah,
pop vinyl age.
Yeah, Roger, what you were saying there are a lot of events, and I think in the mid '80s there was a distinct darkening of themes and art across DC and Marvel Comics, and I think that change in the culture of comics and the artwork and the storytelling is what starts the Copper Age. And what I'm saying is, for me, the first event of that sort of like DC Vertigo darkening overall in the mid '80s, the first event was the Spider-Man black costume, because that black costume, which was the symbiote, it gave Spider-Man sort of a dark side when he was in the black costume, and that was '84. And then in '85 and '86, DC launched some stuff, and I think you've got, you know, Frank Miller's Dark Knight took Batman down a very darker path than he had been previously. So I think, you know, a lot of stuff really got dark in the mid '80s, and I think the first event of that is Spider-Man's black costume. So yeah, I think you're right, and I agree with you. I picked the earliest sort of seminal event of that in the mid '80s to say that's where it started.
So that's sort of like the precursor, the first hint of the Copper Age to you.
Yeah, that's what I think. I mean, you got the black costume, and then you got DC's Vertigo, and then I think the you know, after the black costume for Marvel, I would say the Dark Knight miniseries by Frank Miller is the DC version of sort of that, and you know, that went on for a while until McFarlane took some guys with him and started Image, and when they put out Spawn, that was a huge event.
I mean, I'm going, you know, I was around back then. I was actually working at the comic book shop, and I don't remember people having a different type of attitude or changing their buying habits once Spider-Man 252 came around. I remember it somewhere around 300 when Venom came in. I remember them at that point kind of changing their habits and sort of gravitating toward the darker stuff like you were talking about, because then at that point, then the Dark Knight Returns came, and even some of the Marvel issues that had slightly more you know, darker overtones, and especially but especially you're talking about those I'm talking also Green Arrow, I believe, had Longbow Hunters. I think it was those kind of issues. That's when people started noticing and wanting that and actually asking for that. And that's when DC, and to a greater degree than Marvel at that point, you know, sort of assented and said, okay, we're going to go down this path.
Yeah, I think you're right. And then, you know, when the 90s started in 91, you got Image. And this was the start of a lot of things that the comic market sort of changed, because you had Image, which, you know, I talked about a few times here with the the artist's own thing. But you've also you have books coming out that are selling. They're printing millions of copies of books. You know, X-Men 1 with the 5 covers, the Jim Lee series, and then you've got Spawn. You've got a bunch of Image books. I mean, they're putting out lots of books. They're huge print runs. It's super competitive, and then they start instantly messing with like variants, foil covers, holograms, all that stuff that the 90s is known for. Sort of started right there. So I think that's a distinct break from the Copper Age.
Yeah, I agree with that. With the latter end of your analysis, I agree with that. Especially when Marvel, just gave their, all their characters to all those creators from Image. When they did that to me, that's when I got out. Because to me that was the end of an era. And just at that point, the characters were no longer the characters that I loved and I knew for. At that point, 20 some years.
All right, panel. So I think we're pretty much in the same ballpark as for when the Copper turns to modern. And as far as me and Deadpool 2323 are concerned, we think the modern era ends somewhere around the variant craze of 2005 to 7. And that's when the variants just started pouring in heavy. And who knows what they're going to call that. That little gap.
Yeah, well, let's make a name. We can start the trend.
Yeah.
Pot
metal age. I don't know. That's
and that's when they started also renumbering everything number 1, right?
Oh gosh, that goes. DC did it 4 times in the last 10 years. They've gone crazy. Just talking about the black costume. Well, I'll give a little side note for a minute. I was at a con yesterday, and I was talking to Jim Shooter. And I asked him about the black costume, and he actually gave me 2 different stories about the black costume. But the one that I wanted to share tonight, while I had DS on, because I know you're a big fan of black costume, you've collected, you have every or perceived first appearance of the black costume, right?
I've got every preview of the black costume that predates ASM 252. Yes.
Yeah. So I asked him about the black and red costume in Marvel Age number 12, which is one of the previews to that, right?
Right.
And you may already know this story. But I asked him, kind of how does that happen? I said, so was it changed along the way? He said, no. He said, actually, it was just a mistake. It was meant to be printed in Marvel Age 12 as black and white. And because the sketch was done in all ink, right? So it was all done in black ink. And it was going to be printed on regular paper, the regular printing paper, which at that time would have been, kind of cream, right? So then they just left the Spider-Man symbol and, the markings on the back of his hands and all that you see that's normally white. They just left it as negative. They just left it negative space. And then before the book went to the colorist took it upon himself. He didn't know, and he thought that it was an omission and that they had forgot to color that he was supposed to put something there. So he just assumed that since Spider-Man had always been red and blue, that it was meant to be red and black instead. And so he colored it in red. So the original sketch work and the original concept by Zek that was black and white was simply an error printing in Marvel Age 12, or not, an error in production in Marvel Age 12 because the colorist didn't know, and so he just put red in there instead. And Jim Shooter says that he blames himself for that happening because he didn't catch it on the editing floor, and he approved the book and he didn't notice that it had red instead of white, and he let it go through. And had he caught it, he would have made them correct it. So there's a little story.
Yeah, that's cool. Marvel Age 12 then has the only red and black Spider-Man costume in history then, because all the other previews, and there's 7 of them, I have all of them, all the other ones have the black and white sketches, and Marvel Age 13 has a preview of the black costume, but it's an actual panel from ASM 252, which was to come out 1 month after that. So Marvel Age 12 will be the only depiction of the black costume in black and red. So that's kind of cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I see a lot of people what I had heard was that, it was a prototype and then they changed the color. to black and white before, ASM 252, but that's not the case. It was always black and white. They just made a mistake when they made this book. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
So just throwing that story out there, and then let's talk a little bit about collecting runs. That was our topic for the night. I think a lot of us have made some pretty hard dents in runs this year. I know I've completed maybe 5 or 6 runs this year. I know all of us have. I think have at least completed 1 run. I've done. Let's see. I just picked up my last. Let me see where that is. Right there is my last Tomb Raider book. So I finished that run up just this weekend. And it's an Adam Hughes cover of Tomb Raider 47, Volume 1. So I finished my last Tomb Raider Volume 1. I finished my every volume of Wolverine run. And this year I was missing at least 1 book from each volume. So I finished all those volumes. Completed Werewolf by Night, Volume 1. And I think that's it. And a couple of Lone Ranger, Volume 1 and 2. Plus annuals. So I've got quite a few runs under my belt. I know you guys have too. So what I was wanting to talk about was, how do you approach the run? How do you strategize? When do you decide that you're going to turn a random book into trying to complete a run? And then how do you approach it from there? And I want to ask Roger first, because I want to know what he really does, because his collection is so robust already. But I'm sure in the past he's completed runs as well. And I know he did one this year or close to it. So how is it that you approach that?
Well, there's really 2 or 3 different reasons why I complete runs. The Ghost Rider, which I just, obviously you guys saw my video today and you were in the chat last week. You saw that I picked that up. And I've completed I technically it's not complete. I'm missing like 2 or 3 issues in the 40s and 50s, but that's no problem. I have them somewhere, but I can't find them. I think since I'm moving things around. Who knows where they are, right? But yeah. So I'm counting it as a complete run if that's okay with everybody. And that is just because that is a childhood, favorite. That's that and because that Ghost Rider 1, I did have it and it was stolen. That whole story that I think most people have already heard of. So that's why I wanted to complete that run. Plus, I just think he is just a fabulous character. The duality of his nature. It's the reckless, the daredevil who made an impulsive pact with the devil and has to pay for it for. Until issue 81. And, on all his crossovers. So that's one reason I fall in love with characters, and then I want to complete their appearances. And so that's why I have a complete appearances of Warlock until his first death, and whatever that was, Hulk 178, I think. And also Deathlock, because again, that was the first comic that I bought off the stands myself, was that Astonishing Tales 26, and that really blew me away, because that character was very different than what I remember. The Superman and so forth. He was violent. He was arrogant. He was counterculture. He was everything that I have never seen in comics before. And so that really attracted me to him. But then I have also a run of Sandman, which I'm showing you here. And I think Simon Comics is going to like that. This is the purple variant of issue number 1. Of course, me and the variants, how I roll that way. Yeah. And this is a run which only lasted 6 issues. And by the way, I think, and Simon, if you're still in the chat, let me know. But I think this issue here is the last collaboration. Let me see if I can find my bat. Yes, here it is. This issue here is the last collaboration between Simon and Kirby in comics, as you can see down here. And that, to me, makes it kind of special, because these are 2 creators that are, just some of my favorites, some of the real, instigators of the comic medium, right? And so I again, I just found this very intriguing because of the creators here. Now, Jack Kirby, actually, he didn't do all the issues, but later on, he did some of the covers and some of the interior art later on. Okay, see, he says now featuring the Power Pack, so he came back in 4. He just did the covers in the other ones.
Mm.
So the creators here are what really, gravitated me toward this title and wanted to complete it. Actually, there's another issue in Canceled Comics Cavalcade, I believe, which of course I do not have, but there's only 30 of those around. Yes, he says that is the last Simon and Kirby collaboration. Okay, I thought I was right about that. And then, of course, there are the runs that I completed because I picked them up when I was a kid. I started in 1974. And so, I have, complete Hero for Hire collection because I started, I think, probably in the teens. And I went back and got, because that's just what I did. I just wanted to see how the story continued. Or in this case, what the story was before I started collecting. And so that's why I complete runs. The character, first of all, and the creator, and then those that I picked up as a kid. And then I want to make sure that I want to complete as much of the story of the character as possible, or the title. And in the case of Hero for Hire, I don't have all his appearances, but I have most of them. And certainly all of them in Luke Cage's title. So I hope that
you tend to... Absolutely. You tend to wild too, right? So when you're
breaking
like,
up on
for
me,
instance, on Dracula run, I was saying that Dracula run, weren't you?
Okay, that's for a different purpose. That's for a project that I'm working on, more of a value stamp project. I do have gaps in my Tomb of Dracula collection because that wasn't a character or a title that I picked up as a kid. But I did pick up a lot because they were in the quarter bins, but I am missing about 4 or 5. No, not even that. I think 3 or 4 only now. Because Ray the Silencer Man, I bought, I traded some for him. You sent me, I think, 1 or 2, and I found several others around. So that's for a whole nother objective. That's because I have a project, but that's not necessarily the run. It's just the issues that have those stamps in it.
Well, Nate, you're collecting and finishing off those runs.
You broke up a little bit there on me, Bub. I'm sorry.
I was saying that what runs you like to get them in the wild, not necessarily.
Yeah, correct.
Or anything else.
Yeah, the obviously there are some which even Deadpool 2323 can't find everything, right? So,
hey.
So there are, but generally I do try to pick them up in the wild. Obviously, there are some that I'm not going to find a Marvel Spotlight 5 in a garage sale. I mean, that's just it's 1 in a million, So I'm obviously on that one. I'm going online. But for the vast majority, I am very patient, and I will go to sales. I'll go to conventions. I'll go on Craigslist ads, and eventually, I found about 95% of everything I've wanted.
That's great. That's pretty good. DS, you finished a run this year too, didn't you? And
well, Bub, you're breaking up again. I heard you say that I finished a run, so I'll just tell you about that while we wait for him to get his technical difficulties fixed. But yeah, I completed a run. I mostly
thanks.
All right, so I mostly collect Golden Age at this point, non-superhero Golden Age, pre-code horror, and some of the funkier stuff from late 40s if I can get it, but mostly pre-code horror. I completed 1 run so far. And a lot of these titles have fewer issues than a lot of superhero books that people are used to, because a lot of them started in 1951 or 52, and then when the Comics Code Authority came around in 55, that put the kibosh on these titles. So wherever they were at, that was pretty much the end of it. I finished this run. This is Charlton publication from the 50s, The Thing. This one I'm showing is number 12. This is the first ever cover that Steve Ditko did.
Yeah.
I completed this run. There's 17 issues. They're pretty hard to find. I started this run 4 years ago by picking up 2 copies of number 1. And then it took me 4 years, and finally this year I've completed that run. So yeah, really, really happy with that. I generally go after runs in these pre-code titles because I either like the title, like this one, or Chamber of Chills, which I'm working on. That has 26 issues, and I've got about half. I just love the art and the stories and the different artists and writers they had in those titles. But then also I'll go for runs that are sort of random, like for instance, I've got this recent pickup here. I just got this in the mail today. This Blue Bolt. It's an LB Cole. So for me, a run would be all of the LB Cole Blue Bolt covers, the ones he did. You know, Blue Bolt is a long title, and a minority of them have LB Cole covers. But as a set, sort of, or a run, I would like to get all the Blue Bolts that have LB Cole covers. You know, there's some other Golden Age titles that have really low numbers, like Suspense Comics. I showed a couple of those in my video today. There's only, I think, 11 issues of that, 11 or 12 issues of that. I'd like to have all 12 at some point. You know, one of them is, you know, $150,000 book. Probably won't ever get that one, but Terrific Comics is another one. There's only 6 issues in Terrific Comics from the 40s, and it's got some LB Cole covers and some Schomburg stuff. Really cool. There's only 6 issues. I've got one, but it's the toughest one. So, you know, those are types of runs or sets that I try to complete now. And it basically goes on what the artist did, or if it's a particular title that I really, really dig, I'll try to pick them up.
Yeah, that's an awesome LB Cole cover there with that bat-like creature and the space motif. That's really cool.
That is cool.
Yeah,
That is
thanks. This
awesome.
one, I've been looking for that for a long time. You know, some of these, in Golden Age, the word scarce takes on a whole new meaning. I mean, everything's hard to find. Some things are super hard to find, and then there's some you just never see. This is at the hard end of very hard to find. It's not a complete ghost, but you might see maybe 2 a year. So I'm very fortunate to get that one.
And I find it cool that it has on the bottom margin there the other titles. I don't think that I've seen that before in any other comic before.
Yeah, I mean, this is basically the stories that are in here, I think. I just got this today and just went through it for a resto check, but I haven't read it yet, so I'll do that later
those
tonight.
are not other titles. Those are like just snapshots of the stories.
Yeah, this is,
okay.
You know, these titles back in the Golden Age have, you know, even like this Chamber of Chills probably has 4 or 5 different stories in it. This one has 4 stories in it. So I guess the 4 stories it has in it are these. And they just put them on the bottom there. But I haven't actually read this one yet, and this is the first Blue Bolt issue I've picked up. So I'm going to read this tonight, and it'll be the first time I've ever read an actual issue of Blue Bolt. So I don't know much about it because
they had like a war series too on Blue Bolt, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, Blue Bolt's from the 40s, and they had I don't know, sort of like a boys' adventure sort of comic. It had stuff like that. And then they had some war-themed ones, which had a lot of planes on them and then some war stories in them. And then in the 50s, they went into the horror, well, more sci-fi, but with a horror spin on the sci-fi, and that's this one. And those are mainly the ones that LB Cole did. He did, you know, some of the airplane World War II war-themed ones, but his sci-fi ones are the ones that are sought after. And that's this is really towards the end of the Blue Bolt run, is the stuff he did.
By the way, DS, I absolutely love that Tailspin LB Cole cover.
Yeah, me too. That's really cool, right?
Yeah, I'd seen that in one of your videos previously, but then watching your video you uploaded today, when you kind of highlighted his explosions and how all of his explosions are black, just the colors, the way he uses the shadowing with the explosion, and then that yellow background. I'm like you, I like a yellow cover. So I that is going to be on my want list in the near future, I think.
Yeah, that's a cool one. You know, there's this misperception that Golden Age stuff's super expensive, but you know, as an LB Cole fan, there's a lot of these LB Cole books that I showed in that video today that weren't more than, you know, $150. I only spent on that Tailspin. I think that only cost me like $75, and that's like
awesome.
Yeah, it's like a 4.5 to a 5. I mean, that's a nice book. $75, and it's a one shot. It's pretty tough to find, and the back cover actually has an illustration as well, that it has like an assemblage of different planes from each country, each of the allies during World War II, and it's got the label of what they are and a description. So it's almost like a second cover on the back. I actually should have showed that. I didn't even think of it.
That's pretty cool.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, there you are.
Yeah,
Bub.
welcome back.
I was just checking. Just while we're on the LB Cole love, I picked up my first LB Cole book this week, and I think it'll be no surprise to DS which one it is.
Nice. Yeah, I like that, man.
That's one of those books that haunts my dreams in a good way. So like I literally have had dreams about this book, owning this book. Like I see myself holding it and thinking, oh wow, I've got it. I finally got it. I've passed up on it. I missed out what I thought was a miss out a couple of times. Guy was trying to buy this book for under $25, and it seemed like everywhere I looked, it was 25 or more. And for a good condition, I wanted a really good condition copy. And this book is almost perfect. And I ended up it was never off my radar, but I kind of got lucky and stumbled back upon it. I kept researching for it, and then I found it for like $6. And
wow,
I'm just
that's cool.
So there's an affordable LB Cole. Even if your budget is between this and a Big Mac, I'd rather have this. So
yeah, I mean, I pick up Golden Age books that I like, and most of the time they're pricey. Sometimes they're insanely expensive, and sometimes they're relatively affordable. And I don't go after books based on what they're worth. I go after them based on what I like. And something like that Tailspin or that Captain Flight comics, I think I only paid like $100 for that. Those are super cool books, and they're cheap, and I just get what I like. And sometimes they're cheap and sometimes they're not, but when they're cheap, it's like a double bonus because you get something you like and you didn't spend a lot.
Yeah.
DS. Oh, sorry. DS. Do you have the LB Cole partner to Tailspin? Jeep Comics, the one with the dinosaur.
Oh, I love that. I love that one.
Yeah, that one's pretty tough to find. It's got that bug-eyed dinosaur
Yeah.
and the two kids in the Jeep jumping over something. It's like
That's
a purple blue
it,
cover. Yeah. No, I don't have that.
Publisher, so I thought maybe you had one.
No, they did 2 issues, Jeep Comics 1 and Jeep Comics 2, and that's it. And he did Jeep Comics 2. Jeep Comics 1 is not a cover by him, but that would be an easy run to complete if it weren't for the fact that you just can never see those books. That would take you forever to complete that run because they're just not out there. But I'll pick that up at some point. I think I've seen one recently in the last several months, but it was pretty beat. And yeah, I don't know. I'll get it at some point. But yeah, it's a cool cover.
Okay. I thought maybe since you had the Tailspin, and that would be like that one that LB Cole did for that publisher. So I thought maybe you had the pair. Someday.
That's cool.
No, but I mean, that's a run where if I pick up the Jeep Comics #2 that has LB Cole, I will pick up the 1 just to complete the set because that's a 2-book set. I'm not going to pass that up. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But I'm not trying to get the whole Blue Bolt run. I'll just go for the LB Cole ones.
Yeah.
And Aaron, Deadpool 2323 had a big pickup, didn't he? To complete a run this week. Tell us about it.
So the long story goes, I had about 17 books left to get to finish my X-Men Silver Age run. No major keys. I was calling around looking for one of the books that we had discussed a couple weeks ago, and they had a Emerald City, it's a local comic shop, had down in Tampa. They had a Daredevil #1 for under $1,000. So I'm like, oh well, that might be a real affordable book to get. Like I said, I was looking to make a big purchase, so I went down there, and it was like a 0.5. It had a bunch of cutouts on the inside, and that immediately takes it off my radar. And but what they had is they had these huge boxes of Silver Age. This is a huge comic book shop in Tampa. It's the actual comic book shop. There's an office upstairs, and in that office is Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti. That's their business office. So anyway, I started going through their Silver Age, and they had just about every book I needed. in multiples. So I just negotiated the prices with some of the worst condition ones that were still, they're all complete. And so I was able to get 16 of the 17 that I needed to complete that run. And then I picked the last one up at my LCS, Yancey Street Comics. So I was able to complete my X-Men. I now have 1 through 544. And that took me 4 years to do.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's quite an accomplishment. Hey, just remind me, and maybe some other people don't know too, what's the significance of number 544 as being the end of that run?
That's just when they ended the run.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know that. I mean, I never got past like in the 300s. I think 302 was the last X-Men I ever picked up.
That's when Marvel reset all the numbers again.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
I love it.
Yeah,
actually,
they've 544 was the original end, and then they had the second volume, and then the third volume, and then they went back to the legacy numbers, and they went over 600, and I can't keep up with it. But 544 was the end of the first run, and I'll tell you, when I first started out back in collecting, runs were what I was doing, and I wanted all the runs of the books I collected as a kid. Because if you don't know my backstory, when I was a newlywed and we had young babies, I sold off my whole collection. And so I wanted to get all that back plus a little more. And so I went after hardcore. My first run I ever completed was New Mutants, 1 to 100. And I'm still probably most proud of that run because that run was I love the New Mutants and X-Force. So I have the entire X-Force run. I have the entire Excalibur run. I have the entire X-Factor run. Wolverine, I have all of volume 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I have the entire X-Men run, entire new X-Men, and the entire now X-Men and Uncanny X-Men. But I got everything from about 150 up to 300, and I was moving up, and I stopped, and I said, I changed my strategy, and I decided to go after the more expensive books. So I started working my way from 150 back, and I wanted to get Giant Size X #1 and up, and I did that 2 years ago. I finished that, and I had gotten everything Giant Size X #1 and up, and I said, all right. I made a decision at that point. Alex, the comic order, had finished his Silver Age run, and that really motivated me to say, hey, this is doable. So I put this year, 2018, I probably needed about 40 Silver Age books going into 2018 out of the 66, and I just really worked my tail off to get them. So really happy to get that.
And congratulations, that's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, thanks, guys. But my next run, I'm looking for Tales to Astonish. That's my new one. I'm going after that run now.
Starting at #1?
I already have #1.
But I mean, you're trying to get from 1 all the way to 100 and 101?
1 to 101, yep.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Wow.
solid. That's a solid Silver Age run there. And that has a couple different categories because early on it's that pre-hero monster stuff, and I really dig that. And, we were talking about the comic book eras before. Silver Age started with the Comics Code Authority in 55, 56, and then the superheroes really started in like 61 with Spider-Man. I think basically kicks that off, sort of 61, 62. You got the Hulk, the Spider-Man, and that's Fantastic Four. I think between 55 and 60, especially Marvel was sort of wallowing in finding who they were as a company, what their medium was going to be, like what are they doing, and it was sort of unclear what was going on. I almost think that's like a separate little era, and a lot of the like Tales to Astonish and Tales of Suspense, the early halves of those runs are when Marvel was still figuring out what to do with their stuff, and there's a lot of just like monsters with a lot of double letters in their names and just a lot of weird stuff. It's super cool, but it's sort of its own little era before superheroes got their footing, but after the golden age was crumpled by the Comics Code Authority. So anyway, I just throwing that out there.
And that's why I thought Tales to Astonish 27 is sort of a hybrid comic, because it brings in elements from the monster, the pre-hero monster, and they're starting to experiment to see if a superhero themed comic will work. And that's why I thought Tales to Astonish 27 was, one of the more critical comics, because in Marvel, it sort of showed that was the first time, or one of the first times, that they were actually thinking of looking into the future and seeing what it is that would work as a comic.
Yeah, and I think
obviously knew that era was dying.
Yeah, I think that's like 1959, if I'm not mistaken. So that's before Spider-Man, before Hulk, before Fantastic Four. So yeah, I think that's definitely significant. And there's a lot of characters in those pre-hero monster books that ended up sort of being prototypes. They sort of revamped a lot of those later as characters that we now know and love from superhero books, like the Watcher, and even stuff like Swamp Thing, Man Thing, those type of characters. There's a lot of sort of prototypes in those pre-hero monster books in Tales to Astonish and Tales to Suspense mainly. I think those are the two big titles in that genre.
Yeah, I think Amazing Adventures had maybe one or two, like Dr. Droom, I want to say, was.
Oh yeah, Dr. Droom, yeah.
But otherwise, you got it. I think that's exactly right.
So Tales to Astonish #1 is from January 1959. Tales to Astonish #13 is from November 1960. So, yeah. In my opinion, I mean, they predate every superhero book in Marvel. In my opinion, they're two of the better, rare, I should say, not better, but two of the more rare Marvel Silver Age keys to get. So my Tales to Astonish #1 is a great story behind it, and it's going to be the feature of an upcoming video of mine. But
tease.
What's that?
You're a tease.
I am a tease. I've told the story a couple times in my hauls. It's from my Marvel Silver Age haul that I got last year, and it's got a detached cover, but still, find that book. You just don't find it. I mean, I go to conventions all the time. I go to major conventions, and I don't see that book. So I'm okay to have that book with the detached cover.
You're talking about the Tales to Astonish 27 or #1?
#1.
Yeah, I mean that's a tough one to find. Deadpool, when it gets back into that, you're sort of getting back into the era I collect. Detached covers, it's not a big deal, dude. I mean, you're not going to get like VF copies of anything back then. If you can even find it and afford it and come across it and be able to get it, if it has a detached cover, yeah, okay. That doesn't bother me. I mean, as long as it's presentable and complete.
It's still complete. It's just detached. So it's.
I mean, you get.
Well, the cover's split, so the back cover's attached, the front cover's not.
Yeah, but I mean, you still have a complete book. You can't get too. Yeah, when you start getting back beyond 1960 and get into the 50s, and if you go back into the 40s, I mean, people who are collecting Marvel Mystery Comics and early Timelies, I mean, they'll have married centerfolds, staples replaced. I mean, coupon cut off the back cover, from a bound volume maybe, and it's not trimmed or anything. It's got staple holes through the whole book. People still want them because, I mean, they're so hard to find and they're expensive. If you can even get one that's complete, it's still good. I mean, restored copies of Golden Age stuff are super expensive still. I mean, it's not as big of a deal once you get back beyond the superheroes of the 60s.
Yeah, especially something like that, a #1 issue from Marvel from way back in '59, and that first Groot. Come on, any condition will do.
Yeah, that TTA 1 is like $1,000 a point for that book. So I mean, if you can even find a 1.5, that's a respectable, valuable, awesome book.
That's very nice.
I'm going to be looking for a #2 if you know where one to find.
Well, I'll let you know if I come across one because I'm perusing that era of books a lot. So if I see one, I'll let you know.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
In the dark corners of all those websites, sniffing for unmarried books if you can get them.
Well, I don't hunt in the wild hardly at all anymore, just because of what I collect is not found in the wild. But I have really perfected how to dig deep online and in other resources without leaving the house and find stuff that's out there, like this Blue Bolt. I found that out there, and other people could have found it if they knew where to look, but they didn't. And so you can, no matter where you're hunting, you can find stuff if you dig deep enough.
Well, I tell you, one of the things that I realized today, a new comic shop opened up in my area. I know, a new LCS, and they had their grand opening this weekend. And I went to it, and I had already talked to the owner of the LCS a couple weeks ago to agree on price structure for me to sell them some books. So what kind of what's trade them books, maybe for credit, maybe for money. I don't know. I hadn't decided. But basically, I just realized, like, going through the shop a couple of times, a regular LCS, I never find anything in there anymore. It's been months since I've been to an LCS and thought, oh, wow, I'm excited. This is going to be something that I don't have or something that I need to complete a run. I mean, they have some back issues. They have some modern books too. They had some wall books. I mean, it was about as legit shop as you could want, but there just wasn't anything there that interested me really at all. And anything that did interest me, even slightly, was overpriced just enough to where, I'll go buy it somewhere else. It was rough. So I know what you mean, DS, when you say, you don't even bother to go in the shops anymore. I'm kind of starting to feel that way. I hate that because I like going to LCSs, but.
Well, I go to LCSs. I mean, they're not L for me, but I go to CSs every time I'm out of town on vacation, wherever, before I get there, before leaving for vacation or a trip or visit family or whatever. I'll scout out the area and see where the comic shops are, and I'll pick out a couple I think might be good. And when I get to my destination, I will go check them out. And I usually go in and ask, I'll look around first and I'll see what they have. And then I'll ask if they have any Golden Age. And most of the time, if it's not the owner behind the counter, it's somebody that works there or whatever. They're not even really familiar with what I'm asking. And it's just not the type of stuff you find at comic shops anymore. The last time I asked if they had Golden Age, he said, we have one. It's that Fantastic Four #1 on the wall.
Ooh.
Not a Golden Age, but it's a huge book. But I mean, so, and that was a top-notch shop, and they had, an FF1. But I mean, most of the time, I don't know. I mean, I'm getting older and I'm jaded somewhat about these things. But I remember going to the comic shop in the 80s as a kid, and it was like a gold mine of back issues. There was no Magic the Gathering or Pokemon or anything like that. There wasn't a lot of toys. It was just long boxes and racks of some new stuff and stuff on the wall, and it was all old stuff. And I wasn't as experienced as I am now, but I remember seeing stuff that to me looked ancient. So I'm sure it was Silver Age stuff at least. But now it seems like there's a comic shop in my town that's still called something comics. And I went in there. They don't sell comics anymore. They just do like card games and toys and stuff like that. They don't even have any comics. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, wow. I think Diamond is sort of hurting comic shops because you can't depend on new sales. They have to do all this other stuff. But I don't know. I think the comic shop dynamic has changed over the last several decades for sure.
A lot of it too. In my opinion, a lot of it too, DS, I believe, is all these movies and comics are popular now. I mean, how many times have you heard of somebody passed away and bequeathed them their comics, and they didn't want it, so they just sold it. They went to a comic shop and they sold it for pennies on the dollar because they didn't know what they had, or they didn't think it was worth any money. Oh, you'll give me $500 for this collection of comics? Great. And meanwhile, there's $10,000 worth of comics sitting there. But you don't see that anymore because everybody – it's so easy to just pick up your phone and scroll through eBay and say, holy cow, this comic book's worth this much money. And it's harder and harder for comic shops, in my opinion, to get older stuff. And that's why you're seeing comic shops, they have to do other stuff to stay afloat. They have to do the toys. They have to do Magic the Gathering. They have to have their hand in as much as possible. Dungeons and Dragons, Hero Clicks, whatever it is that they can make a buck on, because they're not making the profit margin on old comics that they used to make. I mean, they used to make at least a 50% profit margin, and now there's comic shops willing to make a 30% profit margin on old comics just to keep the stock flowing in. And then you look at these conventions. I mean, MegaCon's the big convention down here in Florida, and it costs like $1,000 for one small table. It costs like $1,000 for all 3 days. You want 2 tables, it's $2,000. I mean, and they don't cut you breaks, And then you go to these big comic conventions, and MegaCon's been getting a lot of bad publicity because they're bringing out all these super celebrities for the movies and the TV shows, and that's great, but that's not bringing people there to buy comics. That's bringing people there to meet celebrities. So the comic book dealers are like, yeah, well, start bringing some amazing artists in. Start bringing the Adam Hughes, the Jim Starling, the Steranko, the Neil Adams is at everything. So yeah, he doesn't count. But and that's what brings people to these shows. I'll tell you right now, Neil Adams is not bringing one person to a show in Florida because he's at every show in Florida.
Yeah.
And if I miss him this time, I'll get him next time. Stan Lee, that brought people in. Rob Liefeld, that brought people in. Todd McFarlane, that brings people in. J. Scott Campbell, that brings people in. But you get a lot of these guys that do all the big ones, and they're there every year. They have to really mix it up and bring new ones in. But these comic shops, they can't afford to do those big shows. If they're a brick and mortar store, chances are they're not doing those big shows. And chances are, if you see them at big shows, they're probably not a brick and mortar store.
Yeah, yep, that's true. I was in the con I went to yesterday. There were a ton that were from Canada. There were comic dealers from Canada. They had come down, and I don't know what the conversion rate or what the deal was, but they said that they could make more money selling books in the States. And I guess they kind of like got together. So it would be like 3 or 4 comic shops in I don't know what they're called, Province or whatever in Canada. And then they would come down and split the cost of one table. And then they would all sit at the table. It was wild. And I'm in the middle of the country. So you'd think airfare alone would be too much more than they would make. But they said that they did well down here. I don't think that there's a lot of dealers. I tend to see the same dealers all the time.
Yeah, same thing here, pretty much. And another thing that Deadpool was saying, and I don't know if he mentioned it, but also comic shops don't sell nearly the volume of new comics that they used to.
No, not at all.
Not even close. I mean, when you look at the publication numbers, if you get 100,000, that's a woohoo. 100,000 would get you canceled in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, really.
So they're just not making that much. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we used to make back in when I was working, we used to make maybe 5 cents a comic, 10 cents a comic, when you consider everything. So we had to sell thousands, to make up money. I don't think they do anything like that now.
But Roger, I also believe a big part of that's because in the 70s and 80s, it was kids buying comic books. Now it's all adults. I can't tell you, like, I recently stopped buying my son's comic books because they weren't reading them. I kept finding them laying all over the house, never read. And so I'm like, well, if you're not going to read them, why am I spending my money to buy you these books that you don't even care about, you leave just laying around? So I didn't say anything to them. I just stopped buying them. They haven't asked me. It's been 3 months. They haven't asked me about it. Because there's too much to distract kids these days.
Yeah.
With the internet, with YouTube, everything that's out there to distract them. They're not. It's not like when I was a kid, man. I couldn't wait to get my new comic books in the mail because I didn't have an LCS. I had to order them direct to the house, so I couldn't wait to get my new ones in. And I'm telling you, within 5 minutes of me opening, getting my book in, I was somewhere reading a comic book. But it's different today.
That's the same with me when I was younger. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have computers. I mean, there was Nintendo, but I didn't have one. And I would go to the comic store whenever I could get a ride over there from my mom or whatever, and I would buy a stack of comics with my allowance. And that's what I did. Me and my friends would have comics, and we would trade. And like, here, let me borrow that one. You can read this one. And that's what we did for entertainment. That and going out and getting in trouble in the woods. But We didn't have. The kids now got cell phones and they're on
That's a
those all
story
the
for another
time.
day. What happened in those woods? Yes.
Yeah, that's the story's never going to be told on this chat. But yeah, I mean the comics.
Maybe in the after chat.
That's why I hear people talking about like when is the comic market going to crash. I'm almost not clear what that even means, but I mean the comic industry is completely different now than it was before already. It's already sort of quote crashed because it's not like it was in the 80s even where you know people would buy in comics, kids were buying comics because that's their main thing to do. A lot of times they loved reading them. You get your new issue that came out each month and different characters you liked and the stories. And now it's like they're printing comics for adults and they're trying to do it in a way to make as much money as possible off adults who are buying them as collectibles. And I know a lot of people are reading these too, but it's adults that are reading them and they're doing, you know, 30 variant covers for an issue. That's purely to make money. That's not for the love of the art or because they're putting out good stories and good art. I mean, those same stories in all 30 of those covers in those books. So they're not marketing them to kids anymore. And like Deadpool was saying, I mean, his kids aren't even reading them. I had books that I read until they fell apart and they went from being near mint to a good plus in a couple weeks. You know, how many times you read them. So totally different now.
Yeah. And I remember, you know, just going through comics and so much in them. You know, right now they're all just the main story and some in-house ads, and that's about it. But I remember I remember reading the comic first through just to get the gist of the story of the comic. But then I would go back and read the letters page. I would go back and mull over every single detail of the advertisements. If there was any other in-house, you know, editorial or anything like that, I would read that too. You know, so I would reread a comic and find new things every time I reread them. Now there's none of that. You know, it's just the story of very little writing, just some art, and that's it.
Yeah, and you can read everything digitally now. I think a lot of younger people or even adults signed up for these digital services and are reading books digitally. But most of the books that are being bought or being marketed by Marvel and DC are with the idea that people are going to buy them as collectibles, as opposed to the 60s, 70s, 80s, where they were putting out art that were intended to be bought and read for the enjoyment and collectability was second. They only became collectible because people loved buying them and reading them and seeing the art. That's what made them collectible. So that has to come first. If you are just purely trying to put out collectibles, I think it fails because the collectability arises organically out of something that is sought after because of what it intrinsically is. And that's what the comics used to be. I think to a large extent now, they're putting out stuff which right out the gates is meant to be collectible, but you can't do that. You can't create something that's collectible. It has to organically grow into that because people love it for what it is. And when you're doing 30 variant covers and people are scooping them up because they're collectible, why are they collectible? Because they're collectible? Yeah, that's not really a reason. There has to be something intrinsic about it that leads to collectability down the road. That's how I see it.
Wait, so you mean that X-Force #1 I have that says collector's edition is not collectible?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually
Probably not. Yes.
No, here's the thing. That is collectible, but there's just 75 million copies of it, so it doesn't have a lot of value. But everybody's got one. It's definitely collectible. Every collector's got a copy of that. It's just not worth anything. But it's definitely collectible. Yeah, value and collectability are not always the same. I mean, there's stuff that's collectible that's not worth a lot. But it's still collectible. People want it, but you know.
Yeah, but the manufactured collectible, I think, is what you're talking about, DS. The fact that it's artificially created scarcity, that is what got us in trouble back in the 90s. And that's when, believe me, I remember when Marvel almost went under. I remember those days. You know, where they had to, that's when they had to sell off Spider-Man and Fantastic Four, Ghost Rider.
Yeah.
They had to sell that to keep afloat.
Well, it's like that company that used to sell, I used to see infomercials in the 80s and early 90s where they sold like plates that had images on them and like, I can't remember what the name of the company was. They were very famous. Everybody really knew about them. They would have these infomercials where they would sell these collectible plates limited to only.
Oh yeah,
What
had
was
like
it?
Elvis plates and Engelbert Humperdinck plates and all kinds of stuff like
Yeah,
that.
different stuff like that, and you could get your plate, and it would come, order now, and you get this free bonus collectible this, and those things aren't worth any money, but they sold a lot of them, but they're not worth anything now. I can't remember what it was. The company, maybe Franklin Mint or something. I don't know.
This is going to show you guys real quick. So I got this comic in the mail just Saturday, I guess, and it's Superior Adventures, The Amazing Adventures of Superior Sam #6. It's the newest one from One Legged Books, Chris Barkham. Roger, have you got this one yet? Have you gone and picked this one up yet?
No, I haven't picked them up yet. I'm going to do that after I move. I'm kind of nervous about ordering anything now.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. I've had that issue too in moving. But I was just going to show you 2 copies. One of them is regular, I guess, and the other one says to BUB'S Comics, different is okay. That's his tagline. He signs all the comics with that. And then it says 2018, and if you can read that, it says Gold Edition.
Oh, Chris. Oh, boy.
Because he signed it in gold. And,
I want one of those. Do not give me a silver edition. I want that gold one.
No, you're getting the silver, man. I know I had, when he first put these books out, he signs all the books, and he was using like some kind of green marker, and I couldn't read it. And I sent him a thing, and I said, look, of course I love the book. Thanks for signing it. But you really need to use like a metallic pen or something, because I can't read that green on green. It's hard to read. So I wonder if he did that that could be a one of a kind. My point is just in what we were talking about. So now this is a collector's item, a gold edition, Amazing Adventures of Superior Sam #6, and I may have the only one. So, how's that? That's rare, but I don't know how scarce it is, but it's rare. So there you go.
Yeah, no, that's a cool book, and that's somebody in the YouTube community who's actually putting out content in a comic book itself. So that's really cool. Yeah, and he was on our show a couple months ago. We had a blast with him. Hopefully, we'll get him back at some point.
Yeah, his schedule is crazy, I'm sure.
I have a few comics. Andy Borders, I won his best, and he's also a creator, and he's made a few comics, and he did that sketch, that Master Kung Fu sketch. So we have a lot of talent. We have a lot of talent on YouTube, a lot.
That's awesome.
Here's another collector's edition here with the free Skybox trading card still sealed in there, Deadpool. So
nice.
I know you want to break into my house now to get that one.
Oh yeah.
Good luck finding it in this mess, by the way.
I'll figure it out.
Oh man. All right, guys. I think we've done it again. We've wasted everyone's time, ours included. But I've enjoyed it as usual.
It's been fun. Appreciate you having me on.
Thanks for coming back on with us, Deadpool 2323. I think I've tried to have you on maybe 4 times since the last time you were on.
Yeah, that's a hard-working guy over there. Very hard-working guy.
It's tough. It's tough out there. So I appreciate you giving and joining us. And of course, as always, Roger, Metarog, it's always a pleasure to have you. I know that at some point you're going to say, I can't make the show because I'm carrying boxes. So you let me know when that happens, and I'll find some people with some strong backs and weak minds to help you.
Yeah, send them right over.
And
I have been slinging boxes for a couple days now, and my back does hurt.
I've got a T-shirt that says "We'll work for comics," so you just let me know.
I got plenty of those.
I'll be there.
Hey, quick funny story. Roger sent me a text message of a picture of a bunch of comics. And he said, it was a good deal. It was cheap. And I thought it was his comics that he was wanting to sell to me because he's moving. And I'm like, wait, where's this? And he's like, oh, he forgot to send me the link.
I just sent him the picture, not the link. Yeah.
So then he sent me the link to the Facebook, and I didn't buy it, but it was funny. I was thinking, wait a minute. He told me he wasn't selling his books. What is this? What is going on?
That's awesome.
It was 30 long boxes.
Yeah, I don't have that many. I don't think. I have somewhere in the 20s, but I don't think I have 30.
I have in the teens, if that. I don't even think I have that.
I got
I
4.
also have like other boxes with comics. They total almost 9,000 based on my last entry here.
Yeah, I'm up to a few hundred.
I have 20 short boxes. I don't know what that means.
20 short boxes?
It's under
That's
3,000.
about
I know
10
that.
long
It's
boxes.
10 long boxes, yeah.
But
I'm
about
keeping the
100
habit steady.
I always say it's about 100 books a box for short boxes. So
There you go. I'll take it.
Well, I fit 125 in mine, so
yeah, but you do the front and back and
yeah, I do the front back. Yeah,
drop
Yeah,
them.
and he irons them before he puts them in with low
Well,
steam, right?
I don't need to. They iron themselves with the pressure.
All right, guys, and thank you, DS Comics, for being with us as always. As soon as we let you say your tagline goodnight, then you're just going to shut the whole. He just kicks the plug on the way out of the room. Is all he does. And
Well, I try to stay on Mrs. DS's good side, so I got to get back up there and not spend too much time here. But always a pleasure. This is the highlight of my week, comic-wise, always. Deadpool, thanks for being here. I'm really glad you were able to be on again. You're becoming a staple, which is a good thing.
Appreciate you, and I'm enjoying being able to be on these shows. I wish my schedule allowed me to be on more often.
yeah, he's already off. He already signed out there.
I'm still
Sorry,
here.
Deadpool
I'm
2023.
sticking around. I know Bub gets all up in his feelings when I just say bye and hang up and leave, so I'll wait. I don't
I got the
get
feels,
too
man.
upset.
I can't help
It's like reverse guilt here. He's making us feel guilty for him sticking around.
Yeah,
Can you believe this?
that's awesome.
Oh, man. All right, guys. Well, let's shut it down and see you next week. And I'm going to say go ahead and read a comic. And DS, you can tell us what to do.
All right, everybody, make sure you do your homework.
Good job.
All right, see y'all later.
See you. And Roger,
Okay, everybody. Be back next week and be blessed. Bye.
thank you. And Deadpool, you don't have a sign off, do you?
I
Yeah,
do.
he does.
Maybe if you watch my videos,
Oh, wait.
you see
No. Collect what you want and don't apologize for it, right?
collect what you like. Don't apologize for it. And happy hunting.
Sweet. Thank you. All right, y'all. Read a comic. Good night.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.